Picture this: a quiet night on a foggy beach. Suddenly, gunfire. Smugglers, running rum under the cover of darkness, scrambling to escape. In the chaos, barrels worth millions vanish into the mist. This was Prohibition, where crime, courage, and desperation ruled the night. But how did we get here? To understand, we need to step back to 19th century America, a time when moral reform was sweeping through every town and city. Alcohol was seen as the root of all social ills: poverty, crime, broken families. Religious groups, fueled by a growing temperance movement, saw alcohol as the enemy of a virtuous society. Together, they called for a sober America. And they didn't just talk, they took action. Imagine activists like Carrie Nation storming into saloons, wielding hatchets to smash bottles and barrels, or temperance marches filling the streets, drawing larger crowds with every passing year. The Women's Christian Temperance Union led the charge, their rallying cries only growing louder. After decades of relentless pressure, they finally achieved their goal. In 1919, the 18th Amendment passed, banning the sale, manufacture, and transport of alcohol. By 1920, the Volstead Act was in place to enforce it. But here's the twist: banning alcohol didn't make people want it any less. Almost overnight, a vast underground economy took shape, fueled by rum-runners, moonshiners, and hidden speakeasies. The more law enforcement tried to restrict supply, the stronger the demand grew. America's grand experiment with sobriety was off to a rocky start, and it wouldn't take long for the cracks to show. With alcohol outlawed, major cities like New York and Chicago transformed into playgrounds for a new underground culture. Speakeasies cropped up in every neighborhood, tucked behind false walls, hidden in basements, and accessed only by those who knew the secret password. Step inside, and you'd be greeted by the sounds of jazz, the dim glow of forbidden indulgence, and the unmistakable clink of bootleg liquor. And the best speakeasies? They were prepared for anything. Many had levers hidden behind the bar, ready to shut down the whole operation at the first sign of police. With a single flick, cocktails turned to coffee, the jazz faded, and the party vanished. But in the rural South, things looked different. Moonshiners were perfecting their craft out in the secluded hills of Appalachia and the steamy swamps of Louisiana. Hidden stills could disappear just as quickly as they appeared, churning out brews strong enough to make even the boldest drinker pause. These moonshiners knew how to keep the law at bay, sometimes with the help of local sheriffs who took a cut of the profits in exchange for turning a blind eye. And along the coast, rum-runners smuggled alcohol in from Canada or the Caribbean. Among the best was Bill McCoy, whose commitment to delivering pure, uncut liquor earned him the nickname the Real McCoy, a name still associated with authenticity today. In some places, bootlegging wasn't just a business, it was a family operation. The Jenner brothers, for instance, transformed Chicago's Little Italy into a hub of illegal booze, roping entire neighborhoods into their operation. But make no mistake, this wasn't a friendly family business. Violence followed the Jenners everywhere, and they didn't hesitate to eliminate anyone who got in their way. On the other side of the spectrum were the so-called gentlemen bootleggers, like Roy Olmsted. A former police officer, Olmsted built a peaceful smuggling empire in Seattle, importing Canadian liquor without ever firing a shot. But as his operation grew, so did the risk. Before long, federal agents caught on and Olmsted found himself on the run. Then there was Al Capone, the undisputed kingpin of Chicago. Capone didn't just control the booze, he controlled the city. Bribery, intimidation, murder, you name it, Capone used it. Yet Capone was a man of contradictions. Even as his empire turned Chicago into a war zone, he funded soup kitchens to feed thousands during the Great Depression. To some, he was a villain. To others, a twisted kind of hero, a figure as puzzling as Prohibition itself. But Capone's power came at a high cost. As his enemies grew, so did the pressure from law enforcement, and that's where Eliot Ness steps in. Eliot Ness, just 27 years old, was handed one of the toughest jobs in America: bring down Al Capone. With a hand-picked team known as the Untouchables, Ness launched raid after raid on Capone's breweries, chipping away at his empire one bust at a time. But Capone's men weren't about to go down easily. Bomb threats, bribes, ambushes. every day brought new dangers. Capone's men even tried to buy Ness off, offering him bribes large enough to tempt anyone. But Ness's resolve was ironclad. The more they tried to sway him, the more relentless he became. As the stakes climbed, so did the toll on Ness's personal life. Friends distanced themselves, his marriage frayed, and soon Ness found himself almost entirely alone, trapped between duty and despair. But he wouldn't give up. He became a symbol of what it meant to be unbreakable in an era where nearly everyone had a price. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., there was George Cassidy, a bootlegger with a flair for theatrics. Cassidy had his own liquor delivery service in the capital, supplying lawmakers who had banned it. Picture him in a trench coat, strolling through the halls, liquor hidden in plain sight. Cassidy's antics turned Prohibition into a dark comedy, revealing the absurdity of the ban. Bootleggers weren't just outlaws, they were innovators. To stay a step ahead, they modified cars with hidden compartments and powerful engines, giving rise to high-speed chases that would one day inspire NASCAR. Some disguised their whiskey as medical supplies, while others relied on torpedo boats, fast, sleek vessels that could outpace patrol boats along the coast. Moonshiners became masters of disguise, hiding their stills in hollowed-out logs, caves, even inside barns. It was a constant game of cat and mouse, with each side innovating to outsmart the other. And every new tactic from law enforcement was met with an equally clever workaround. For these bootleggers, staying ahead wasn't just about making money, it was survival. By the early 1930s, Prohibition was unraveling. Instead of reducing crime, it had empowered organized networks bigger than anything the country had ever seen. Corruption spread from coast to coast, and the public's patience wore thin. Then came the Great Depression. With jobs scarce and the economy in tatters, legalizing alcohol looked like an easy way to generate revenue. In 1933, the 21st Amendment was ratified, and for the first time in 13 years, Americans raised a glass in public. The noble experiment was over, leaving America with lessons that would echo for generations. Prohibition left a powerful legacy. Banning a vice doesn't erase demand, it just pushes it underground. Today, we're still asking the same questions about marijuana, gambling, and beyond. Where do we draw the line? Maybe history repeats itself because, at the end of the day, human nature doesn't change. So, what do you think? Was Prohibition bound to fail, or was it simply ahead of its time? And how do its lessons apply to today's debates? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed exploring this chapter of history, hit that subscribe button, because there are always more stories to uncover, and we'll be here to tell them.